The cost of an agreeable room. And guys, before I get started here, can I just be vulnerable here and say I was not good at this early in my career. I just wasn't, because I had not been exposed to what I was actually doing during the meeting and how I was squashing creativity and getting everybody's input.
Yep.
As a leader, it felt good running a meeting and rolling through it and not having any pushback and knocking it out. And you naturally think when you do that you're killing it and big things are getting ready to happen because you went through the meeting, everybody nodded their head, you were reading the room, it went off without a hitch. But that's so far from the truth.
You and Shelby have probably taught me this of going through, but I can see where there's non-confrontation there. But if I'm going through and there's nothing and I see nodding, I'm like, whoa, slow down, because no one's responding. And we can deep dive further into that, but it's not good if they're doing that.
It's one of those things. And so Matt said as the leader, learning, like, if everyone's kind of like a football pregame speech, right? Let's go with no friction. That's not the time for a friction, but that's what you were trying to achieve, right? And all meetings have different energy levels, but still the idea of moving forward. On the other side, because I'm in that boat, I've been in that boat many times, is to be a second in command or a third in command or not the one leading the meeting. I've had to work on how do I introduce friction without saying you're wrong, without saying, hey, you've done it improperly. So, because I am one saying, hey, hang on. Even if I know the answer, sometimes I do that to interject confliction to say, there might be a question here. There might be, so that's the good part about the three of us. Almost every single meeting, there's at least two of us in there and say, hey, can you go back over that? I probably missed something here. And I'd say 50% of the time it is for me.
Sure.
The other 50% is, but having to learn that. And so then you to learn, like, it's okay. I'm not saying you're not good or you suck or you missed this. I'm just saying we probably should stop and break it down, because this first line, a manager who never disagrees with you isn't loyal. He's either checked out or scared. Think about that. Like, they're checked out or scared. How good of a process can they be giving to your customers, to your team?
And you know why that is? Is because they don't have any skin in the game. They don't feel like that their voice and opinion is valued. They're never asked for it. So then that's why they're not loyal.
Yeah.
Because they don't feel connection. They don't feel like, hey, that's part of my idea too.
And why would I put my neck out there when my neck might get cut off?
That's right. So we just got out of a meeting yesterday. We had our monthly meeting yesterday with all of our general managers and some key department head managers. And I'm going to tell you guys this from example. So I kicked off the meeting, went over some facts. We always go over some type of KPIs and reports to just get everybody's mind going, okay? And then we had an agenda where everybody was going to update on what was going on, how their department was doing, what they needed help with, where they'd grown, where they'd gone back. I was the last one to go. Now, if you looked at my sheet, and I scribble all over everything, the things I was going to go over, I marked out almost 50% of the stuff I was going to go over, because one of the people around the table had already gone over it. And if I had gone over it, and I had stolen their ability to go over it in excitement of they've either accomplished this or they're looking to accomplish it, it takes buy-in away from them.
It does, but it also allows you to say, hey, I properly delegated that.
For sure.
And they got to be the champion in this.
That's right. And the spotlight, I have no problem with spotlight being on them. So again, the only way, now let's take that in reverse.
Yeah.
What about if I'd gone over my list at first? I would have removed 50% of the stuff that others could have been involved and engaged in during the meeting.
And if they were high level, they would have adapted and not even brought up the fact. That's one of my pet peeves, was like, well, Matt went over everything I was going to go over. I'm like, well, that's stupid. I don't want to hear that.
Sure.
But I'm not calling you stupid. I'm calling the process stupid. But what a high level adapter would say, okay, I need to go over my B tier, my C tier
Mhm.
stuff. I was bringing my A game. He went over that stuff and say, hey, here's some other things we were working on. But most of them would just be like, oh, that was my thunder. I'm done.
So think about this. Silence in a meeting is not consensus. It's missing information you're about to make a decision without.
Yep.
So if you've invited to a meeting, now let me dial back just a little bit here. What Shelby talked about earlier about like a pregame, you have pep rallies.
Mm-hmm.
We have sales pep rallies. We have pep rallies in the shop. We have Friday pep rallies. We're not talking about pep rallies here, okay? We're talking about focus meetings that you're going over. And I really like this one, and I don't know when it was in my career, but at some point in time, it almost has turned into a game with me during a meeting of trying to figure out who's trying to be silent and to get them plugged in.
Yes.
And everybody has this handful of people. They have a handful that they don't even have to worry about. They actually have to calm them down.
Yeah, no, it's the guy that you see nodding off or you see on their phone. It's no different than a good teacher would say, hey, Taylor, tell me about this. And they're like, whoa, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? And so then you recap them so they don't fall on their face and say, hey, explain to me your thoughts on this.
Yeah. We have a manager, a very, very solid manager on our team. And I'm not going to say his name, but if he's listening, he'll probably figure this out. That does a fantastic job for us, but probably has a good case of ADD. Okay. Probably has a pretty good case. Strategically during meetings, he is the one that does calculations for me. And I constantly ask, hey, pull out your calculator, run these. He's involved then. We're not going to change, his great attributes or my great attributes. Let's embrace them. And that's the way that I keep him involved there. It's going, hey, calculate this for me. What's that show? And then I'll pick somebody else in the room. Could I calculate it myself? 100%. But it's about getting involvement. And if they'll do that, then they're more likely to go, hey, I had an idea right here.
It's funny. So Monday morning sales meeting is the idea. We recap the weekend, the previous week's activities. We look at the KPIs, how are we doing? And then it's my plan to then introduce something new of something that's relevant in training and sales. But I've started integrating in more if I'm going to recap last week's activity. Then I'm going to introduce something new, and then I'll recap the entire meeting, and here's our game plan going forward. So I kind of base the week after, like on Monday, if I introduce that, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, what did I see on the floor? Did they adapt, and did they use that new idea? And so then if I don't feel like it has a good pulse, and I ask, hey, who's got questions, this, and you never get hand raisers, right? And so then I will recap it again. Well, 4 weeks now, been running. I talked about, we hand out a lot of spiff checks. And I think what kicked it off is we handed out roughly $15,000 in spiff checks above and beyond on the Friday sales meeting, our pep rally.
Sure.
And that Monday, I thought, hey, who's investing some of that money back into their business? And so then that was my whole training of that. Like, okay, of that 15,000, who went and bought lottery tickets, who paid off bills, who bought this, and this. Okay, how much did you set aside, a percentage of what you got paid? And it was a spiff check. It was above and beyond to reinvest in yourself. And so I was talking about tier 4 marketing of keychains, of pencils, of business cards, of sold by stickers, of hats, of t-shirts or coffee mugs. And so then I went through, it had about 10 different renderings. You could do this, you could do this, you could do this. And then I had a page with 50 items. And so I showed them what it was. And then after the meeting, I posted in Slack, hey, here's the ideas. And I challenge you to just do one. Order one today, right? And then I told them, hey, if you submit that over to the marketing team and it has proper placement of the Lewis logo and your logo, I'll pay for half of that. I'll pay for 50 cents on the dollar. That's something that we've always done, but reminded them of that.
Sure.
So, and I even gave them links of where to buy them at. A couple different ideas. The problem is it was so far out there. So week 2 comes back around after a full week and I say, all right, recapping last week, everybody raise your hand that ordered something. Guess how many people raised their hand? Nobody. And I said, guys, so we've done this for 4 weeks now. So on this Monday, I said, okay, let's stop here. And there was one person that had ordered something. And some people came and talked to me about it. It's just not what they're best at. I said, what's our hurdles? I'm not going any further. We're not introducing anything new. I'm going to take down my stage voice and I'm going to sit on the edge of the table and say, let's figure out what's the hurdle. Someone said, well, I hadn't got my money yet from you to pay for it. And I said, okay, great. That's a great statement.
Yeah.
Let me explain how this works. You buy it, you pay for it, you submit the design, you buy it, you pay for it, you give me the receipt, I pay you 50% back. Like, okay. And they're like, well, I don't know where to get the logo at, your logo. It's like, it's in Slack and Logos, but let me upload it again. So we had to fully stop and break that down to go elementary, but hopefully that involvement will get some more hand raisers to get them to invest.
Okay, so you answered the question for the question I had not put out there yet, but it was great. It was great. So let's talk about this. The agree in the room, do nothing after problem. So here's what happened. Everybody agreed in the room with you. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to get that marketing stuff after there. But then nothing happened after. And that went on for 4 weeks. Well, as a good leader, you said, hey, pause. Before I go any farther forward, let me unpack this and identify what the issues are. You know, you really just got politeness and everybody's like, yeah, that makes sense. Yes, I'm going to do that. Hey, let me ask you about it, blah, 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 blah. But no traction was hitting. And I think that's very important for us to understand is just because you go over at a meeting does not mean that all of a sudden it will connect with the road and move forward. We were laughing about this the other day that, you look back from the things you went over during school. Some stuff you use, some stuff you don't use. I can remember one of the things during school that I thought was the stupidest thing we went over, okay? And it's funny now because I think it makes all the sense in the world. And this was an agri class. Okay, in agri class, we were taught the parliamentary procedure. Okay, and I remember thinking, I'm like, what are we? Are we in the 1900s here going over a meeting? Like who does this? Who amends this and who gets a first and a second? Everybody agree on it and like this whole structure. And now that we've gotten farther in a career, I think about that and it's the structure of the meeting. And after the meeting minutes go out, okay, to tell everybody again, to remind them, here's what we talked about and the action that needs to be taken. And then before the next meeting starts, you have to approve the meeting minutes from the previous one.
Yep.
All that's really saying is you introduce something, you remind everybody about it afterwards, and then you follow up with it to make sure it's put in place, and then you make any adjustments instead of just thinking, I did my job, and then 6 months later, you're like, didn't we go over this? Nothing has happened.
I love that because being able to, we're on Shelby's point, but then you talking about it as well. So many leaders now, they lead, they talk just to hear themselves talk, and they're pounding their chest of saying, yeah, I did that. I went over that, but they never went back. And what is our age-old thing we talk about? Inspecting. So what Shelby and I laugh because I could finally see not everybody in the room, but a good portion of them. Okay, start writing it down. They're actually starting to write. We always talk about your worst ink pen's better than your best memory of being able to write it. And your percentage, you can bring up the learning pyramid. You already have it. How you even got that whenever we were talking about it. But writing it down, Matt will give you statistics of what it does. But I always try, but probably because he's beat it into my head, I'll find myself writing it down in every single meeting. I'm just writing down, trying to do that next step. So whenever I get hit by any of these other, I'm like, I either find it on my paper or it's my memory that goes up to a different percentage.
That's right. So think about why you're doing a meeting, while you're doing a coaching session, while you're doing a training session. Why are you doing that? You're doing it to get a better production out of everybody out in the meeting. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it so they will rise up to a different level and their production and their success will be higher. Well, the learning pyramid, as Taylor's talked about, It does that exactly, but everybody messes up on it. And here's why. Because when you're teaching others, you're at a 90% retention. But what you're really looking for is the other people to get the retention. If they just sit and hear the lecture, they retain 5%. 5%. All right. If you stop and you have a discussion, like Shelby talked about, why are we not ordering our promotional stuff? Let's have a discussion about it. The retention rate goes to 50%. So just by you pausing, you 10x'd what other people do, which is amazing. And then if you'll do breakouts, go over a couple things and say, hey, we're going to practice, drill, and rehearse for the next 5 minutes, pair up with the person next to you, and we're going to go over this. You go to 75 retention rate. So what we're talking about here is whether it's not letting people be silent, getting their input, or role playing, what we're talking about is actually getting out of the meeting what we intended to do. But very few people will take these steps. That's the exciting part.
Yeah, that's the great part. And one thing to go with all those, it's funny, I talked about it in our manager meeting this morning, but they said this guy in a podcast I listened to talked about the basics of a system and how to get it where it's adapted and adopted. It was a 3-step thing, but we talked about you introduce it, then you go over here's your game plan and how you do it. But the third thing is where most people miss at is you don't have the consequences if they don't. Chick-fil-A says, hey, on hiring, hey, whenever your customer comes through, we greet them with my pleasure. After they're done, we say my pleasure. Would you have an issue with that? Everyone agrees in the beginning, right?
That's good.
And then they have the system built into it, and then they have the consequences. If you don't do that, we're going to sit down, we'll go over why you didn't do that. Then the next time we're going to write you up, and the third time probably made terms for termination. Right, the consequence for not doing that. So they realize it's very clear. You introduce it, you have the system and how you do it, and here's the consequence if you don't do it. It is so basic and black and white, but it's missed so many times.
That's right. There's one last piece I want to go over in this core here because I think this is really, really relevant. It says the higher you sit, meaning as you move up in the company, the less true information reaches you. And nobody sends a memo about it. And that can be tricky because when you were lower, you heard the gossip, you heard the rumble. And as you move up, you think the same thing's going to happen. No, if something's wrong, they've always approached me. They've always told me that, hey, that was a bad idea. But that's not the case. As you move up, you lose disconnection there. So you have to have a good ear and a good eye to be able to see and to ask questions. You now have to extract that information versus it automatically coming to you by just a water cooler. You have to ask those questions. It has to get a little bit awkward to be able to extract. And an employee has to feel safe and not threatened that they can tell you they disagree with what you're talking about.
Yep.
And if you don't create that atmosphere, you'll never grow the company together. They have to know their job's not at jeopardy for telling you like, hey, boss, I know you said this process. I think we need to relook at that because there's a couple areas that need to be adjusted if we want to get the success you're looking for.
It never has to be anything that is crazy intense or intricate or anything else. A lot of times I feel it's most effective whenever you see an issue, you go by and you observe it like Matt's talking about because you have to go interject yourself. You have to go meet them in their area and be able to go over it. We recently, this is the third or fourth time we've went through, but of a delivery process of new Fords that are sold, I finally said, okay, I know how to do it. Managers know how to do it. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to play dumb and have the employee walk me through it. And whenever we walk through it, I figured out what the issues were that were so simple, but they weren't ever going to come tell us. They were making excuses as to why, whenever it was a simple login, that they didn't have it saved. I wouldn't have been able to see that unless I went and injected myself into the situation to see, hey, this is what's going on. Let's fix it and let's move forward. If not, you're sitting there saying, hey, you're being lazy. You're not doing anything, when in reality, they don't know what they're doing. So you need to go inspect it.
That's so good and so simple. And Taylor, by you doing that, you're able to uncover something that was so simple to fix.
Yes.
Most people would just be looking for a new piece of software or a new this or that light switch to fix it. And you're like, you know what? The last time I trained somebody personally on this was 10 people ago. let me just take 15 minutes and in a non-threatening way say, hey, I'd like you to go through the delivery process with me. Let's mock up. We'll do it on this F-150 right here. Walk me through the whole process by just checks and balances. That's good. That's really good.
Absolutely. So, hey, I got something real quick for you here. More than 6 out of 10 employees say they regularly watch coworkers stay quiet when they actually disagree. Truth or false?
I bet that's true.
Yeah, has to be true.
Yeah. So, fact, a radical survey of 600 U.S. employees found 61% of individual contributors often say that people stay silent when they're holding a differing opinion. So they disagree and they don't say anything about it. While 45% of executives named a shortage of honest feedback as their single biggest concern. Both sides fill the gap. Neither side closes it.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark at why I think that's so. Number one, we got to remember naturally as human beings, we don't like confrontation. I don't like confrontation. Number two, I for sure don't like it if I know it's not going to go anywhere and it's going to be a waste of my time.
Yes.
If I know that like, hey, I should say something here, but if I say something, we're going to have to unpack it. Emotions are going to get involved. And 30 minutes later, we're going to end up right where we were, except there's probably going to be some people upset with me. I'm not bringing it up.
Yeah,
I'm not bringing it up.
that's tough.
It really is.